This lecture is about developing the play concept. You have an idea what's going on in the playing field, you know the players on the field, you have an idea about ambition, where you want to go, and you understand the play patterns. And when you bring that all together, it's about creating context. In fact, you create the context for the transformational change in your organization. And developing the play concept is the first step. It's about, contextualizing how we are going to change together. And there is one important sentence here. There is no one best way of changing organizations. And every book, every schooler, they tell you this is the way how to change an organization. With 7 steps or 8 steps, I don't know how many steps. They are just cheating, because they don't take into account the complexity that we encounter nowadays. And you have to be more adaptive. And the change strategy that you choose to affect changes in your organization, choosing the right strategy, that is the most complicated task. So, and there are many ways of changing organization. Let's have a look at them. First, we have the power strategy. And the power strategy is about forcing people to change. And top management takes the initiatives and set clear goals, what they have to reach. And you have to follow, and if not, you can go. So they are forcing, in fact, the change process. I'm not against power strategies. When there is a real crisis in the organization, or when there is cheating in the organization, then you have to be clear as top management where to go and what you don't accept. So yes, sometimes the power strategy is useful, but mostly not. And if you only do it by power, usually it's only short-term changes and not in-depth changes. The second one is the rational change strategy. Here the initiative is taken by top management. And they set aims, not clear goals, but definitely they give the direction where to go. And they get the involvement of consultants and experts that helps them in effecting the changes. And they're not forcing the people, but definitely try to motivate them and to bring them in one direction. And it's about convincing people why change is needed. Rational strategy. It's not about emotions or feelings. It's about this is where we are, this is where we go, these are the steps that we're going to take. The third one is a negotiation strategy. And in a negotiation strategy, people have distributed power. So in the power and rational strategy is definitely top management that has the power. But when there are more groups having same level of power, by example in a merger, you need to negotiate. So you bring people together to negotiate, to find a future together, and then you have to know the needs of each other and to compromise, to looking for compromises and for a future. Well, you can imagine that negotiation is definitely different than forcing or bringing people in a change process. It's another dynamic. And then the fourth one is about motivational change strategy. You try to motivate people with a challenging future, with a challenging ambition, with, you keep people serious. That's what you do. And you try to get them on board and maybe seduce them with a common future and a common ground. And so then change goes step by step. The fifth one is the learning strategy. And the learning strategy is about experimenting, looking what's going on, learning from each other. And you may understand that the learning strategy works pretty well in a dynamic environment. And if you have developed a very clear play ambition, then of course the motivation strategy may help to develop the play ambition together. The sixth one is the dialogue strategy. And the dialogue strategy, well, the future is completely unknown and you want to create the future together. What you like to do is, well, going step by step. And people lead themselves, they collaborate, they're looking, they're searching in an unknown, uncertain environment, which is quite ambitious. And by acting and doing, they are able to change. So I presented now 6 change strategies. May I ask you a question? What is the dominant change approach in your organization? Is it power? Rational? It's about negotiation? Do you see motivation, learning, or dialogue? What I know is in most organizations, top management follows a rational change strategy. And there may be a little bit of motivation to get people on board. The learning strategy is not used that much. And the dialogue strategy is seldom used. So now you know what is the dominant change strategy in your organization. I have a second question for you. What is your preferred change strategy? And when I ask other people, usually they say, well, between motivation and learning. And they want to go away from power and rational strategies. But I told you, there's not a single best way of changing organizations. So it is depending on what is going on. Let me give you 2 examples. Klure is a publishing company. And what they published were kind of handbooks about law or finance. And in these books, they put all the regulations from governments. And these books sell for 200 or 300 euros or dollars. And that's what they did. And they were very good in it. So they collected all these regulations, put them in books and printed the books and sold the books. And well, that was the world they lived in. But Nancy McKinstry is the top manager here. And she's a rational lady, I can tell you. But she had a very clear vision in mind. And when we go to digitalization, we need to adapt. And she chose a rational strategy. So printed books will not be the future. We have to go digital. And she did it step by step. The first step is we go from annual books to quarterlies, to quarterly journals. And they publish these quarterlies and they're very interesting for lawyers, for architects. So they were sold very well. But in fact, what she did was just a part of a bigger plan. And that is speeding up the sharing of information. And then when you have quarterlies, it's also possible to make it accessible by devices, so digital. And that was the second step. And then she started to open the digital environment with these journals. But when she opened that, it was also possible to go to weeklies. And the weeklies are published now on all kinds of devices. And people can look at it and the information that is more actual. And the final step is that everything is at real time, online, using your phone, using your iPad, and looking even on real spot about regulations. And well, this change process took 7 years. And of course he didn't have everything in mind, but the aim was clear. We go from print books to a digital company. We go from a publisher to an information company. And that was what she was looking for. That what we was, well, working for. And she realized to do it. And she was really successful because the printed books were just in 5 countries. But when you go digital, you can expand to now klure is delivering trustful information for professionals in 150 countries. I think this is a nice example of a rational strategy. And of course, she motivated the people to come with her on this new direction. But it was mainly rational. This is our aim, this is what we do, these are the steps that we take. So one example. The other example is more about learning and dialogue. It has to do with 3M. And again, there is a lady, Julia Bushman, that is the business developer of 3M Healthcare. And 3M Healthcare produces drapes. And drapes protects you against infection when you have surgery. But they realized that the drapes were losing market share. And then she told the people from her department, for her business, please find out what makes that our drapes lose market department. Because we create the best drapes in the world. So these business developers are visiting surgeons around the world in hospitals, and they told them, well, you know, yeah, I know, but you have the best drapes. No, you cannot improve them. And when the business development asked them, but why don't you use them? Yeah, well, we use them, but not as much as before, because there are cheaper alternatives, and they produce in Asia. And top managers force us to use the cheaper ones because we need to take care for costs. So that's the reason. But 3M knows what they stand for, what they go for. And 3M will never go in cost competition because their ambition is to be the best in the world and to be innovative. So the business developers came back to Julie and they told Julie, listen, we're just too expensive. And Julie thought, well, we don't go in cost competition. So try to find out, because now you've been looking on places we know. Go to places that we don't know to look for an alternative. Think out of the box. And then one told them, I've heard about a hospital in South Africa that has 0 infections. They're not using our drapes. And the meaning of our drape is to preventing infections. So they went to South Africa, to that hospital, they found it, and they found out that they were using a kind of solution based on African herbs, soluted in antifreeze, which is broadly available and very cheap. And when you put it on the skin, there will be no infection. So they were so happy that they found out a new way of preventing infection when there is surgery. But then a new problem turns up. When you use these African herbs on a white skin, the skin became irritated and red. You don't see it on dark skin, so you could use it in Africa. But you definitely cannot use it in the Western world. And I know, they were so frustrated. We have a new product and we found it by learning, experimenting and dialoguing, and what can we do now? And then one of these business developers told, I've heard about makeup artists in Hollywood. And with some makeup artists, the artists get red eyes after some weeks, while with other makeup artists, not. And they use the same product. So maybe it's not only about the product, but it's also about the application. And then they went to Hollywood and they had a look and they discovered it's not only about the product application. And then they developed a complete new product. As you can see on the picture there, it's a travel kit with tissues that are used by African herbs with different colors, how you can apply. And what I think is beautiful in this story, they find a complete new market in developing countries and contribute to the life of mothers and siblings, by example, that give birth. And well, the birth rate in these countries was increasing enormously. So they contribute to, well, life in our world, which is beautiful, I think, based on a learning and dialogue strategy. So you've heard now 2 examples, the rational one and the learning and dialogue one. And of course, both are possible. But what is the most appropriate strategy in your organization? Again, 3 change dilemmas, now related to the change concept and developing the change concept. And the first one is considering change strategies. What is the most appropriate change strategy in your organization? And of course, when there is a crisis, you may not have time for deep dialogues and you need to act power and rational. Or maybe you are in a merger or you need to negotiate with all kind of partners on the playing field. Like an earlier example, I told you about children with obesitas. And then you negotiate what could be the contribution to every player on the playing field. Or maybe it's about motivation, but when people are motivated already, why should you use a motivation strategy? Then probably learning is more interesting and more effective. And when you don't know where to go, then maybe learning and dialogue is more important. But now let's go back to one of the earlier lectures about the playing field. And is the playing field simple, complex, dynamic, or chaotic? When I ask people in organizations, most people, experience the playing field as dynamic. And in a dynamic playing field, the learning and dialogue strategy can be very helpful because it's possible to experiment, to realize deep changes in your organization. So considering the change strategy that fits to the situation is one of the biggest challenges in every change process in an organization. The second one is combining change strategies. Are you able to combine them? Well, if you combine all the strategies together, I know one thing for sure, people get lost and they don't know how to change and what their contribution could be. So how are you able to combine? And the third change dilemma has to do with the size of the change and the depth of change. And if you need to change, well, in a broad scale, in a big project, by example, what I told you about Walter's klure, if you want to change the whole business in a rational strategy and grow from analog, printed books to a digital world, you cannot do it simple by experimenting. Of course, they experiment, but it's a broad, deep change process where everything needs to change, all the way of working, and then it's a large change process, rational, planned, step by step. But if you want to innovate, then you cannot do it large scale because innovating is about experimenting and learning. So then it's about, okay, let's experiment, let's try out small steps, and then small experiments, learn from it, and then see how we are able to use these learning and experiments to create a change process that really encapsulate the whole organization. So what is your choice? Big, large change of the whole organization, or experimenting with new ideas, new ways of working that may affect your organization on a certain time?